Okay, what I want to look at here, we're going to move from talking about the blades to how to sharpen them. And there's lots of different ways of sharpening a rotary blade. So the simplest, cheapest method, hand file, I would pretty much never recommend that, simply because it's so slow. And so it's not cost effective. You're at home, you're working in your garage, you're at your buddy's house on a weekend. He may have a file, he probably doesn't have something else. Okay, you could reach up in there and you can actually file it with a file and you might accomplish something. And so, but I mean, realistically, there's a lot more tools out there today than a hand file. So, and especially if it's a dull file, this one here's pretty dull, it would take a while to hand file it. So you'd have to be filing one direction only. If you're working on the machine trying to file, it's just a pain in the neck. And so I don't recommend it. But, you know, it may be all you've got. So the next one we have here happens to be a 4.5 inch grinder. The 4.5 inch grinder is pretty effective. You can actually contour. So if I'm working with a blade that's got mulching on it, I can actually follow the contour of the blade and actually grind it. Pretty effective. And so it's lightweight, not very heavy, and it's pretty easy to do. So the problem is you are taking metal off and it's hard to get exactly the same on both sides. If you were to clamp this into a vise like this and you grind 3 strokes off and then take 3 strokes off, take 3 strokes off and grind it down evenly, when you're done, it comes time to balance it, it'll balance out pretty easy. So if you become more of a robot, it's not such a big deal, and it does work. If you want to get the job done faster, get a bigger grinder. So here we got a 7-inch grinder. This thing here is heavier, so you got more weight to kind of carry around, but it's going to grind faster. With a bigger stone, the stone has more time to cool off before it comes around. You actually will glue it less with this big grinder than with the little grinder. And so the secret is don't just grind on one spot. You give it some time to cool off. So grind, grind, grind. You could have a rag with some water in it that you could tap it on there and get some heat out of it and then grind. If you're trying to make money, you need to be throwing some sparks. You've got to grind aggressive, and you're just going to, and you're going to get right close to that bluing point before you kind of ease up on it. So having some way of kind of cooling it so you can keep grinding is going to be the secret. Really, you can't spend more than 3 minutes grinding and you wasted money. So you got to be able to grind it pretty aggressive. So that's why going to this and just hogging this thing off is going to be probably a rather preferred method if I'm trying to make some money. So, but you start hauling this thing around, you're going to build up some muscles because it's got some torque and it's got some weight to it. Of course, anytime I'm grinding, I'm going to be wearing my safety glasses, not on my hat, and I'm going to wear some kind of hearing protection because it's noisy and you only lose your hearing once before it's kind of a waste of time. So we're going to move on over here, so we'll let that swing by. So over here we have a couple of different grinders, and Oregon Saw Products has donated to us the 3 models that they have. So they have 3 different models of grinders. So we'll start with the smallest one down here. Pretty simple, cheapest mower or grinder that they have on the market. Only travels in one direction. It's got a small engine. It's only 1/3 of a horsepower. So for a shop that's not grinding a lot of blades, it's a nice introductory grinder that you can grind with. Moving up, you're grinding more blades, you may go to something larger. This one has a mulching blade adapter kit that comes with it. It's got a bigger engine in it, motor, and now we're up to 1 horsepower motor, and I can change the direction so I can go forward and reverse with the stone, and gives me a little more versatility. A 1 horse motor, I can grind faster and more aggressive. If I'm really doing a lot of grinding, you go up to this one. Now our engine is 1.5 horsepower motor, electric motor. Again, it has forward and reverse. It has a mulching adapter kit that you can put in there so that you can do mulching blades. With this big a motor and this big a stone, I mean, you can come in here and do some grinding. So it's pretty effective and aggressive grinder. You notice on this one we've kind of rounded the edges off. Getting the edges rounded by how you grind is going to help when it comes to getting this radius. So having a square stone like this original one, you're going to end up, if I'm just going in and out, I'm going to end up with a square cut. A rounded edge, as I go in and out, I'm going to have a round radius. If not, I'm going to have to try to massage that corner and round it out. So getting around it is going to help you there. So we can't demonstrate this particular one because we did what you're not supposed to do, which is have the motor turning one direction and then flip the switch the other direction, and it wipes out the switch and it took out our socket, our plug-in over here in the outlet. So lots of sparks flew out and it ruined our machine. So whatever you do, make sure the stone is stopped completely before you change the direction. It's very hard on the machine. So we're going to let Kendall demonstrate how to use this grinder and kind of what he learned about grinders. So we'll let you take over. I'll stand close so they can hear the sound, so you can face that way.
Alright, so we're going to sharpen just a straight edge mowing blade. That's what the sharpener is currently set up to do. There's a collection box on the back to collect the sparks. Oregon recommends sharpening with the stone going in a direction that's going to bring the stone from the top, go down across the tip of the blade, throw the sparks into the collection bin. Depending on what you're doing, you might not want to do that because that's going to cause the edge of the blade to blue a little bit easier. But
why does it blue?
It blues because of excessive heat. So if I'm going in here and I'm going like that, and it's going to jam, excessive friction is going to cause the bluing on the edge, which is going to keep the blade from holding its edge.
And it's doing that for two reasons. One, because I've created heat at the top and drugged the heat to the bottom. So my most excessive heat is going to be along this edge that's the thinnest. That's going to create bluing. That's the second problem, or first problem. Second problem is when you're going down, it wants to suck the blade into the stone. And it's going to cause it to grind more aggressive. More aggressive will get you some more bluing problem.
Right.
But it makes the collection system work.
Right. So I guess I can go through here and I'll grind one direction and one the other way so you can kind of see how both of those work. When we go into this, Oregon has going in, making sure you're at a straight angle. So you kind of want to stand back a little bit with your feet spread apart so you're braced good.
Off the table.
You want to be able to hold this blade straight, so when I go in with my arm's going back and forth straight. So I'm keeping it a really straight angle in reference to the stone the whole time. You want to be careful that you don't go in too far. If you go in too far, you could actually start to get up on the upper part of the blade here, which we don't want to do that. So
the question just a little while ago was, should I go grind in and out, or should I grind, remove the stone, and grind? What's the difference here?
Well, the difference would be is if you're going to go back and forth here, you have to get this end even. Because this is the part of the blade right here especially that's going to do most of your cutting. So if I come in like this and I go like this and then I stop, I turn and I go back like this. There we go. There's a chance that I may grind this part down more than I really wanted to, which depending on the blade I may want to.
Because that hesitation is slightly back.
Because I'm hesitating right there.
And that hesitation, the stone is still grinding when you hesitate.
Right.
So if you come up to the end and stop, it's going to grind more. So your question was, do I pause? I want to make sure that I go all the way off and then go all the way back in, or go out,
come back around.
Come back around. So what's going to happen is wherever I stop, the grinding is still taking place. You'll have a high spot, or you'll grind more on the inside than the outside,
right,
and it'll hump. So that's why you might not want to do it. So you either have to adjust how you grind so you relieve the pressure and then switch directions.
So then would the going back and forth without pulling it out, does that save you any more time than just pull
It would
out?
save you more time if you
Time.
ground both directions, because the physical movement one way is a waste of movement.
Right.
So you just got to kind of relieve the pressure and then grind.
Because I've noticed when I tried doing that, as soon as you hesitate, it wants to suck it back when you're going backwards versus pushing it. Because you can push it away, but you kind of have a tendency to pull it in more.
Yeah, I'll do both methods here so you can kind of see how it's done. But what I do when I'm doing it back and forth like this, because it is faster, is when I come up to the end, I can kind of feel, I know I'm coming up to the end, I'm going to let off on my pressure. And I can remain let off because I'm staying there longer. So my grinding rate would be kind of determined by two things. Either one, my pressure going in, or if I back off on my pressure, the amount of time I stay there. So by coming in, instead of having pressure, minimum time, I'm going to have time and a little bit of pressure to try and compensate for that. So we're going to start.
Quick question real fast though.
Where's the key?
Right here. When you said that when it's going forward and dragging the sparks down into the catcher in the back, you said that it drags the heat down across the blade and then shoots it out. Wouldn't it be doing the same thing if it was grinding backwards and going up? Wouldn't it be shooting
If we were to grind with the stone going this way, the heat, the source of the heat, the beginning of the heat, will start at the thinnest point, and the hottest point that the stone will be back here where it's thick, and the heat will dissipate through thick metal more than through thin. So that's why you want to, that's why in the Foley book they tell you to grind from the tip up.
Right.
The reason why Oregon is doing from the tip, from the backside down, is to make their catcher work. So when he demonstrates it, what you're going to be seeing, what we're going to be showing you, is the way they recommend it, our catcher works. The stones are going to go away from us, and it's actually going to go into the catcher that's in the back. When we do it the way Foley recommends it, it will not blue, it doesn't suck it in as fast, it doesn't suck in as much, and so your grinding tends to be better as far as you think it's better. It is better, but now we're going to have sparks. I can't stand where I am because the sparks are going to hit me. So you're going to see sparks flying out across the room rather than flying into our catcher over there.
Okay. So then, did we build it backwards then?
We didn't build it. We built it the way it's designed and the way it's demonstrated on YouTube videos that you see.
Oh, so we're not just using the wrong side of it then?
No.
And some grinders, depending if you have a clockwise cutting rotary blade or a counterclockwise blade, you would have to get set up on the other side of the wheel. I think they do that on that machine more, but we have a clockwise cutting blade, so we're set up correctly for that. So I'll start it up here.
See the stuff going into the catcher in the back. With this kind of a large motor and a large stone, it takes a bit to spool it down and to slow it down.
So one thing I noticed really quick when I started grinding was my angle that the sharpener is currently set at is quite a bit back sloped more than I want. I need to try and maintain a 30-degree angle here. There. So to do that on this machine, I'm going to need a wrench. Scott, could you get like a crescent wrench?
What size, about half inch or?
3/4. So To adjust that on the sharpener, what we're going to do is we're going to raise the whole grinding wheel up or down to adjust our angle. So in this case, I'm needing to go a little bit steeper, so I'm going to push the grinding wheel down a little bit. So he just went to get a tool so we can do that. The other thing is with the stone going this way, with the top of with the stone feeding in from the top and going out across the bottom, it really wants to suck the blade into the grinding wheel, which makes it very, very difficult when you come to the end and you try and pull out. So you don't try and take as much, and you can kind of see here a little bit. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but it still took off a little bit more at the end when I would try and come back out and pause and then go back in. So it's close, but if you can see a little bit right there, I did end up taking a little bit more on the ends than I really, really wanted to. All right. So
go back and show how they're adjusting.
So you're gonna need to loosen up these two nuts here first.
Which ones? Do we want a longer bevel or a shorter bevel?
Can't go up, otherwise it comes out of this tray down here.
Even these?
Shorter bevel.
Because it needs to go higher. Like maybe 6 inches.
So Oregon sells for the sharpeners an optional kit. It's a wheel that goes on top, fits on top of this bolt to adjust it, so it makes for quicker adjustments. So if you're doing a lot of them, that might be something kind of handy to look into. So you can just grab it and turn it around and make your adjustment a lot quicker than using a wrench. But that's an optional kit. The collection chute and the mulching adapter is also optional. It does not come with the machine.
Should I go from this side of the machine?
So this plate right here, as you adjust the stone up and down, it changes the distance from this plate to the stone. You want to maintain 1/8 of an inch is the recommended distance between this plate and the stone. You don't want to get that so big that you can accidentally get the blade to pull down in through there. You want this plate to be able to hold the blade up at the right angle to the stone. So now, if you have that wrench handy, I'm just going to leave this loose so I can adjust it back and forth as he go ahead and shorten the bevel. So he's doing right now is shortening the bevel, so it's dropping the stone down and changing my angle. Keep going. So I'm looking down here right now along my blade and the edge of the stone, so I can kind of get a reference point for how far we need to go. So right about there. That looks pretty close. That's where we should be. So now we can go ahead and tighten up our locking nuts.
So now this time, are you going to be trying with the wheel going the other way?
Probably leave it like this one more time, and then we'll do just feeding it in and coming out and going out like this, and then we'll stop it. We'll change the direction of the wheel, and we'll come and do it the other way with the stone coming up from the edge towards the top of the blade. So now that we have our wheel locked down, I'm going to come in. I'm going to slide this plate up to about 1/8 of an inch away from the stone. It's a little bit tricky on this one because this plate has accidentally been jammed into the wheel at one time when it was running, so it's kind of ground away at it a little bit right there. But tighten down little locking tabs, screws on the side, light here, and turn it on. still grinding with the wheel like this. It's still trying to pull it in, which is kind of making it hard to get an even grind across here. It's wanting to pull in right here. I don't know if you can see that.
You can see the shininess of where he ground to where the blade.
Right, so it's starting to pull in right here. So you see a little wider grinding area right here. That's because my stone's going in a little deeper right there. It's just kind of how I am holding the blade, and the wheel is pulling my blade in, which is not really something we want to see. The other thing I noticed when I started sharpening is this blade, if you look, the flat edge of the blade is right here, the bottom of the blade. Out here, since this is a gator blade, it's bowed up. So because this plate does not, this table does not extend out here, when I start here, I can think I'm flat against the wheel, and I start to grind, and then as I go into it, by the time I get back here, my blade then rotates up and changes my angle on the stone.
Start sitting there.
Right here. So as I go in, I then change my angle, which is also adding to my problem of getting pulled in right here, because that happens to be right about where my blade changes the angle. So you would have to start with the tail section of the blade lifted up just a little bit. That way, when I come in, I'm flat with the rest of the blade and everything is uniform.
Also, I don't know if the mic could pick it up, but you could also tell the difference when Wally was grinding, the sound that the grinding was making. You could hear how heavy it was, and then how light it was, and even by how much sparks were getting thrown.
So we're going to change the direction and grind it the other way.
Grind more aggressive.
So, one thing with doing these gator blades that I don't have on right now is gloves. When you're grabbing the back side of this blade here, you're putting your hand on here and you're pushing. It's not a real comfortable thing to grab. So you're definitely going to want some gloves. But there you can kind of see how it came out. You can see right here the top part is ground at a slightly different angle because when we started our stone was up, so our angle wasn't quite correct, but the bottom part here is all pretty much a uniform angle. Coming in here, so you kind of have to come in and just shape this. When I come into the stone, I'm going to come in and kind of pull out of the stone, and that'll give me this little beveled edge right, well, what do they call this little piece right here?
It's a radius.
Radius, there we go. Okay. So, other than that,
Was it easier to grind that direction than their original design?
it's much easier grinding to grind with the stone coming up this way because I'm not getting pulled in. So it's truly just how much ever pressure I apply to the blade into the grinding wheel. That is what is experienced in the grinding, not the stone catching and pulling in and I'm trying to resist it and it's bouncing like this. So it's a lot better if it's the stone's coming up this way and going in. So you might get like a
The only problem
catcher
is it's
and a vacuum here or something to collect it or something.
It's just throwing sparks everywhere. So
Yeah.
if you weren't wearing glasses or something, boy, it's a dangerous thing to do. So,
Yeah.
okay. So the other problem that we would have is we did all the grinding on one because we were demonstrating. You'd want to make a couple of passes, flip it around, make a couple of passes, flip it around. You'd want to be grinding evenly, even though we're using this grinder. So
How warm is that end of the blade? Is it?
It's not really that warm. I mean, it's warm, but it's not hot.
So if you do get blue on it, can you just keep grinding away until the blue's gone?
I would grind until you get some of that blue off because that blue is going to be affecting the surface material. Get below that surface material, it should kind of go back to the material under it.
So would it be wise though to have a bucket of water like we had here before?
It
to
does.
dip it?
If you're grinding aggressive, having a bucket of water to keep it cool is a good idea.
Right. But just having the stone come up this way is going to help keep you from bluing a whole lot easier.
Because it looks like you can, when you go up, it's easier to get that radius more.
It's just easier
Right.
all
All
across the way because you're not.
Right.
It's not
It's
getting
not sucking
sucked
it in,
and
so you're
wedging
preventing
into
it.
the blade.
Which makes it hard to do this angle when the stone's going this way because this is a square edge here, and so when I come in and I catch, it catches that edge and it'll try and just drag it in really, really hard. So it's much better if it's coming up this way to do this
Radius.
radius right here.
Okay, so we're gonna go look at this other grinder now.